Are there any questions about anything that we have covered so far in the class or what's coming up in the class? I'm seeing a lot of no's. I have a yes from Anna. So we'll wait and see what Anna has to say. And we are working on emotion and motivation right now. When are we going to talk about the essay? Well, what about it? It's already listed right here, and also in the course documents area it tells you what to do with the essay. So I have nothing else to say about the essay. What do you want to know that I haven't already discussed in the information about the essays? Nope, that's it. It's just right here is how you get to it. So we're in the course documents. If you go to course documents and scroll down, there's a whole section in here about the cultural distinction, diversity, density, and how to write it. So two different connections that I have information about how to write it. So we're working on emotion and motivation. We're going to start health and stress, but I probably only will get about five slides into health and stress today. But there's a discussion for health and stress. Let me go to health and stress, the quiz and discussion. So the discussion for health and stress is basically what are your hassles in life? So the daily hassles. What are your top 5 daily hassles? And I actually give you mine. Did I? It should be, yeah. When you click on the daily hassles link to get into it, I actually list mine and show you, how I answered that particular question. So, and then people have already started, you can see, writing their own. Okay. So that is the health and stress discussion, and then of course the quiz. You need to have taken it at least once by Sunday. So let's see, emotion and motivation. Let me go to the emotion and motivation slide. And this is where we ended last time, over justification. Talking about how we have an intrinsic motivation, extrinsic motivation. But extrinsic motivation can just devastate intrinsic motivation. And I had a good example for the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivations. There are lots of people that have animals. We are human beings. We fall in love with these little creatures, and we want to take care of them. And we feel good about ourselves because we're taking care of this poor little defenseless animal that we have. And it makes us feel good. It's internal motivation. There's no external portion to that. But there are people who own animals in order to show them, to get blue ribbons and gold medals, and to make money from them. So that's an external motivation. So now people can have both. They can love the animals and they can also want to get the extrinsic rewards as well. But the intrinsic reward is just the feeling that I'm a good human being because I'm taking care of these animals. And the extrinsic one is to get the accolades out of the world for having them. And that extrinsic motivation can destroy the intrinsic motivation. You lose your intrinsic motivation. And we have this happen all the time in business when you go to work for a company and you really love that company and you're doing good for the world in that company, and that's why you started in that company. And 5 years later, you quit because other people are getting the raises, other people are getting the promotions, other people are getting the accolades for the work you did. And so you have switched from the intrinsic motivation of I did this because I feel good about working for this company to I don't feel good about working for this company because I'm not getting any of the external rewards. And that happens all the time. It happens in schools as well. So there's no single theory that accounts for all forms of motivation because each one of these motives and drives involves its own mix of biological, mental, behavioral, and sociocultural influences. And there is no all-encompassing theory, we can measure certain individual portions of it sort of indirectly. We can't measure the motivation because we don't even know what motivation is internal to you. But we can measure it indirectly. And one of the ways that we measure motivation is the need to achieve. It's also called the ENAC. And this is a mental state that produces a psychological motive to excel or reach some goal. Some people are self-starters. They have a lot of ENAC. Others, not so much. So we each have some level of the need to achieve. And a projection test, which is a process by which people attribute their own unconscious motives to other people or objects, is a way to test this. Murray and McClelland came up with the thematic apperception test. And that's spelled wrong. It says it says appreciation. It's supposed to be apperception. The thematic apperception test, which is called the TAT test. So you look at a picture and you describe the picture, and your definition or description of that picture indicates to the person that's listening to your description how you feel about yourself. And one of the best ways I've seen, the best particular type that I've seen is a lady, not a lady, a girl, about 12 or 13 years old, playing a violin. So that's what it is. It's a picture of a girl playing a violin. You give this picture to a person and you say, please describe the picture. And they describe the picture and they describe the girl as saying, this girl is obviously trying to do her best so that she can do really well on her recital, and she wants to make her parents happy with her because she really wants to be the best violinist. And another person looking at the exact same picture might say, this girl's obviously being forced to do this and be in a recital, and she has to do this for her parents' glory, and they completely opposite of what the other person said. The first one has a high need to achieve. The second one has a lower need to achieve. And that's called the thematic apperception test, TAT test. So individualism and collectivism are two ways to look at the world. We are in an individualistic society in the United States. Asians are in more collectivist cultures than we are, and this is definitely an aspect of your essay at the end of the semester. So this is the view that places individualism, is the view that places a high value on an individual achievement and distinction. Capitalism certainly rewards individual achievement unless you do really, really well, and then they say you're a monopoly and they slap you down. So yeah, capitalism is good only to a certain point. AT&T was the only long-distance carrier in the United States, and they got slapped down for being a monopoly and broken up, and now we have long-distance carriers all over. And then collectivism is the view that that values group loyalty instead of individual distinction. And communism certainly rewards the group collective, but communism and collectivism are two different sides. You can certainly be collectivist and capitalistic at the same time. The culture, the collectivist culture, is more group-oriented. There's a great saying. Have any of you heard the saying, the squeaky wheel gets the grease? Have you heard that saying? The squeaky wheel gets the grease. You've never heard that saying? Oh, some of you have heard the saying. Some of you know. Okay. If you're driving a wagon, the wagon wheels obviously have to be packed with grease every once in a while. And it's been a long time since you packed them. The squeaky wheel is the one that's going to get the grease. They both need it, but the squeaky wheel is going to get the grease. Individualistic society. You want help? Ask for it. No one's going to help you just because you need the help. You have to ask for it. You have to squeak. You have to be the squeaky wheel. The person who squeaks the most, the person who asks the most, is the person who gets the most help. So that's an individualistic approach. If you want help, you better ask for it. The collectivist approach is a little bit different, and this sounds really negative, but that's not what it's meant to be. In the collectivist culture, they say, the nail that pushes itself above the board gets hammered back down. The nail that's out of place gets hammered back down. And it sounds negative to people who have been brought up in an individualistic culture, but that's not what it's meant to do. What it means is a board in a boardwalk has a specific task. It keeps people from falling through the boardwalk, and it keeps people, if it's in its proper location, then people don't trip over it. But if it bends up, then people trip over it. So if the nails are supposed to hold the boards down, if a nail does not fit in its proper place, then it has to be put back in its place so that society works. So if you in a collectivist culture have an issue, everybody in the entire group around you is automatically, they don't have to ask for help, they're automatically a part of helping you to fit into society. Everybody has a place in society, and everybody has to be able to fit in their place, or society doesn't work well. And so in a collectivist culture, everybody that knows you is automatically a part and parcel to help you. If they see there's something wrong, they're going to help. They're not going to turn their backs on you. Everybody, because society is important, and you are a part of the process of making society succeed. So that's collectivism. The multiple systems approach to hunger, we now know what it is that makes our brain say that we're hungry, and also what makes it say we're not hungry anymore. So homeostasis refers to the tendency of the body to maintain a certain level of body fat and body weight. There are set points in the brain. Your brain is not the same as my brain. Your brain is not the same as your mom's brain or your dad's brain. Even though you come from that particular genetic stock, you are different. Everybody is slightly different than another person. And so there are set points in our brains, and some people's set points are set where they're thin or skinny, and some set points are set so that that person is heavier than another person. And of course, we have the normal standard distribution curve that will all fit within. 68% of us fit within the center distribution, but then there are people on the outside, their set points are off. They're not like the rest of us. And we tend to say, oh, she's heavy or he's heavy, so he has problems eating food. No, his set point may very well be heavy, so he's heavy or she's heavy. So receptors have given set points in the brain that measure fat and sugar content in the body and weigh this against the normal set point for that brain. And when the set points are reached, then a trigger goes off in the brain to start eating behavior or stop eating behavior. And these triggers are in the lateral hypothalamus, which says, I feel hungry, and the ventral medial hypothalamus, which is, I feel full. So if you stimulate in a rat, if you put an electrode in the rat's brain in the lateral hypothalamus and you stimulate it, the rat eats. If you damage the lateral hypothalamus, then the subject, the rat, never gets the saying, I'm hungry, and will starve. If you stimulate the ventral medial hypothalamus, the subject will stop eating. If you damage the ventral medial hypothalamus so you can't get any signals from it, then the subject becomes overweight because it never gets the signal, stop eating. There was an experiment that was done with a fly back in the days when I was in college. Flies have a particular neuron that goes from their stomach up to their brain to tell them your stomach is distended, you can stop eating now. You can cut that neuron and give the fly sugar water, and the fly will eat and eat and eat and eat and eat until it pops. It will pop. So you will kill, the fly will kill itself because it never gets the message, stop eating. So it turns out that the people that did this experiment found out, not the fly experiment, but the research on the ventral medial hypothalamus and the lateral hypothalamus, that leptin it's a protein, leptin, that's in humans and in rats. And the leptin binds with the ventromedial hypothalamus to trigger the set point to stop eating. As soon as that was known, GNC started selling giant buckets of leptin, because if you had leptin, sprinkle it on your food, and so you'll feel full faster and you won't eat as much. Except, although the rat brain and the human brain in these areas are nearly identical, they are not completely identical, and leptin does absolutely nothing for the human body. We can just eat leptin and it won't stop us from eating. So there are still people today who buy tons of leptin, making GNC, because they still sell it, GNC still sells it, and people still buy it even though it does absolutely nothing to help you as a human being. We do have leptin, but it doesn't do this particular, what it does for a rat. It does not stop eating in a human being. So the person who finds that trigger point that triggers the ventromedial hypothalamus for humans, they're going to be very, very wealthy one day. But we haven't found that yet. Of course, it'd be nice to stop eating. I'm continuously eating, but I have a high metabolism also. My body has very, very rapid metabolism. I use up my calories really fast. I'm hot all the time. I'm exceptionally hot. My skin is hot. And my wife is the exact opposite. She is not. She's very low metabolism. She can sniff candy and gain weight. I can eat a candy bar and not gain weight. But the sugar is bad for me, so I'm not eating sugar anymore. So the metabolism in each person is a little bit different. Again, a spectrum just like everything else. But when you're 20% over your ideal body weight, and ideal body weight means your height for your weight. That's ideal body weight is determined by your height and your body mass index, BMI. But again, it's a spectrum because some people have very dense bones, thick bones. Some people have very muscular, and so they're different than the rest of us in that range. But 20% over the ideal body weight is considered overweight. I'm well over that 20% myself. And 30% over the ideal body weight is considered obese. I'm like 1 or 2 pounds away from, I used to be in the obese section. Now I've lost and I'm down into the overweight section, but I'm like 1 or 2 pounds away from being obese again. So I need to keep losing the weight. And the way to lose weight is through exercise and diet. Walking is not a proper exercise. Walking and running are not good exercises. You do need to use the muscles in your body. Squats are good, lifting weights, not for weight to gain weight and get the most amount of weight, but just figure out what you can move 10 times on your arm, and that's what you use. You don't have to go to a higher weight. Just continue to use weights. And yes, running and walking are good for the rest of your body, for your heart rate and for your blood circulation stuff. But for losing weight, not the best way to lose weight. But data shows that Americans are just way overweight. Most of us are moving into overweight if we're not already. And a large number of us are moving from overweight into obese because we're not exercising like we should. And what we're told is exercise. Well, then we go overboard. So too much exercise causes you to be hungry. Too much exercise causes you to be hungry. So if you just ate lunch and then you start exercising and you're done exercising and you're hungry, then you exercised way too much. And I can't tell you what's right for you because your metabolism is different, your body weight is different, your muscle mass, your bone density. I don't know you. You have to determine what is the right amount of exercise for you. I know some of you are going to say none. I don't like exercise. No, we all have to exercise. And exercise has been shown to be extremely good. People who are in old folks' homes stuck in wheelchairs, get them to start exercising, and they've been in wheelchairs for years. Start exercising their legs, and they actually get out of the wheelchairs because exercise helps build the muscle back and actually improves your metabolism. So extreme exercise is bad, but moderate exercise suppresses your appetite. So if you exercise before lunch and you exercise a moderate amount, you will not be as hungry at lunch. You will eat less, and that's a good thing. There are people who have weight control problems, not just overweight, but underweight as well. The two main ones we'll talk about in the pathology section, but I want to mention them here also because there is a motivation to this, and that is anorexia and bulimia. If you have a friend who's anorexic, you know they're anorexic because they're losing weight and they never eat in front of you. You never see them eat because they don't. They do not eat. They'll go out with you and they'll have an excuse, oh, well, I just had lunch, but I want to go out with you, so I'm going out. Or I ate too much for breakfast, so I'm going to skip lunch. So I'll eat at dinner time, when I get home. So you never see them eat. Bulimics, they eat. They'll eat in front of you. But before they ate, they took laxatives. So before they metabolize the carbs that they're eating, they come right out of them. Or they'll go to the bathroom after they've eaten and stick a finger down their throat and throw it all up so that they don't metabolize the carbs. They get them out of their system before they're metabolized. So that's the difference between anorexia and bulimia, and we'll talk more about them when we get into the psychopathology section. Now, anorexia has been linked to sexual abuse and a loss of love and a loss of control in your life. That does not mean that all anorexics have had sexual abuse, but if an anorexic comes into a therapy session because they're anorexic and they need to learn to start eating again and see their body successfully in its proper way, because anorexics and bulimics, they look at their skin and we can see all the bones in their skin because there's no fat left. So their skin's just hanging onto the bones, and they look in the mirror and they say, I'm too heavy, so still want to lose weight. And we might be able to fix that, but if it's because of a sexual abuse in their past, then they're going to go right back into anorexia again. So we need to work and make sure that that's not the reason that they are anorexic. We need to find that reason and cure it or fix it, face it. So Karen Carpenter, how many of you have heard the name Karen Carpenter or know of the Carpenters, the band, the Carpenters? Some of you have. Some of you have not. Karen Carpenter had the most gorgeous, absolutely exceptional voice. And she was a singer back when I was in elementary and high school. And so that was a while ago. And she died of anorexia. But her band sold more albums in the United States than the Beatles did back in those days. They were very successful. But she died of anorexia. And because she was so successful and because no one knew what anorexia was back then, people, if you didn't eat, the doctor said, well, shove food down their throats and they'll start eating again. That's not going to work. It's like saying, that person has a compound fracture. Well, just stick the bone back into their arm and they'll be fine. No, it won't work like that. So the family decided to let the Anorexic Society use her picture as the picture of anorexia, as the person for anorexia. And so she still is, her picture is still the one that's being used, the poster child for anorexia. And there doesn't help much for the children today because they don't know who she is. But for those of us who know, back in those days, we learned what anorexia was because it killed our favorite singer. And doctors who didn't know what anorexia was or how it worked, they started to learn what it meant to be anorexic and bulimic at the same time. Now we get to sexual cues. And sexual cues, the brain is the major human sex organ. What turns you on is what your brain finds arousing. And for men, that's just about anything. I'm teasing, right? Not so much. But we connect gender, sex, and sexual orientation and sexual arousal all into one bucket. We say you're either male or you're female, and you're supposed to be in this bucket or this bucket. And I'm sorry, everything is a spectrum. It is not two different buckets. Sexual scripts are the way that we have learned to interact with our world. It's a socially learned ways of responding in sexual situations. And these are culturally and family determined. When people interact with different scripts, there are major problems that can occur. My family is a very huggy, lovey, touchy, kissy family. And I cannot go around just hugging and kissing and touching people. We all have our personal space. And if you don't give me permission to go within your personal space, then I should not be there. Now, I was a manager at a company, and I had a lot of employees that worked for me, with me, and I used to walk up behind them when I was visiting, and I'd touch them on the shoulder, comfort little thing. Hey, how you doing? What's going on? Is there anything I can get you to help you, finish your task, whatever that task is right now that you're doing? And I had a female employee who said, I did not give you permission to touch me. You are correct. Absolutely. I'm sorry. I did not mean, that's sexual harassment, touching somebody when they haven't given you permission to touch them. And I stopped not just touching her, but I stopped touching all of my employees, because maybe there's a man out there also that feels uncomfortable with me touching him, but he's not going to tell me because we're macho, right? So we're not going to say anything. So I just grabbed a chair from then on and pulled it up next to him and said, outside their personal space, and said, how's it going? I'm here to find out if there's anything I can do to help you get your job done. What can I do for you? And so I changed, because sexual scripts they're very important in society. We should not be within somebody's personal space unless they give us permission to do so. Now, how many of you have seen my Big Fat Greek Wedding? Have any of you seen that movie? My Big Fat Greek Wedding? Some of you have, some of you have not. It's a great movie if you ever get a chance. That was my wedding. I had 50 people in my family at my wedding, and we're all touchy, huggy, kissy people. She has 4 people from her family at the wedding, and they're very stoic. And here's my family going, hey, welcome to the family, and hugging them and kissing them like, whoa, get back. And they're like, whoa, this is overwhelming. So we have to be careful and understand other people. It took me a long time before I want to hug people. And I wanted to hug my mother-in-law and my father-in-law. And it didn't take very much time before I could hug my mother-in-law, but it took a long time before my father-in-law was okay with me hugging him. And he wanted to be hugged after a while. So we can learn to be a little bit different, but we have to be very aware of other people's scripts. Now, I'll tell you this little piece of the story right here, but in the social psychology section at the very end of the semester, I'll tell you a little bit more about this. But my wife and I dated for a while. We actually dated for 6 years. But when we started dating, she would not hold my hand in public. Remember, her family is very and my family's like touchy-feely, right? So she wouldn't even hold my hand in public. It took a long time before she would hold my hand walking down the street with me. And for about, I guess, the first 2 months, when I went to kiss her goodnight, it was always on the cheek. She'd turn her cheek. I'd kiss her on the cheek. She'd kiss me on my cheek. 2 months. I mean, like, is this going anywhere? Are we going to, do you not like me? Do I have bad breath? What is it? So I decided I'd ask her. And I did. I asked her. I said, we've been going together for a long time, and for 2 months, and I'd like to kiss you on the lips. And she says, You're 12 years older than I am, and you've had 6 other girlfriends before me. Take an AIDS test. If it's negative, I'll kiss you on the lips. Smart girl. You got to be very careful in today's society. Smart girl. And I'll tell you the rest of that story when we get to the social psychology section. So that's sexual scripts. Okay. Gender roles, again, are the ways that we see other people. We see a person and we say, oh, that person is a male, so we assume that they're going to fit a specific role in society, and oh, they're a female, they're supposed to fit a specific role in society. So we create these roles by our interpretation of what it means to be male or female. So these are behaviors, attitudes, and personality traits that society designates as masculine or feminine, and gender roles greatly influence the way we think and behave. When we find out that a friend of ours is having a girl child, we buy pink dresses and we buy Barbie dolls and we buy Easy Bake Ovens. And I'm sorry, but I played with Easy Bake Ovens when I was a kid. My sister got an Easy Bake Oven. I loved playing with that thing. Of course, I would take my little plastic toy soldiers, put them in the Easy Bake Oven, and melt them. That was cool. So, I mean, yeah, but I was still playing with an Easy Bake Oven, even still. I played with Barbie dolls, too, because I had to have somebody to tie up to put onto the train tracks so my soldiers could come and save them. But I was playing with Barbie dolls, too. But, ooh, that's just wrong. Boys playing with dolls and girls playing with trucks. When my wife and I were dating and talking about having kids, we said, we're going to buy all kinds of toys for our kids. I don't care what they are, male or female, sexually, what their sex is, male or female, but they will be able to play with whatever they want to play with. We're not going to force them into a role that society says this is how they have to behave because their outside body is either male or female. And whether you're male or female on the outside, the inside, your brain is what determines your gender, not your sex, not the sexual accoutrements that you have, but your brain. So gender identity is your individual subjective experience of being male or female, irrespective of your biological physical accoutrements. Now, how many of you have heard of tomboys? Do you know what tomboy is? What's a tomboy? Somebody must know what a tomboy is. A masculine girl. Very good. A girl who acts more boyish. It's a tomboy. Do we have any problems with tomboys? No, we don't care. If the girl wants to be a little bit rough and tumble, then we're fine with that. We have no problem with tomboys. We freak out when we meet a Terry girl. A Terry girl is a boy who likes to act more feminine, and we just freak out because of that. Why? If we can accept a girl who acts more masculine, why can't we accept a boy who acts more feminine? And what is masculine and feminine anyway? But what we decided was masculine and feminine as a society. Why is blue for boys and pink for girls? Who decided that? And so your brain determines what it is that you think you are, and people, the majority of us, right? In majority of us, 68% of us, easily 68. There's more than that. It's more like 89% of us are cisgender. Our brain says we're masculine, and so is our body, cisgendered. Or our brain says we're feminine, and so is our body, feminine. But some people are masculine, and they're like, masculine. And some girls are very, very feminine and some less feminine. So it's a spectrum again. Is that person really? I mean, when they get to that line, that cross that line, then we go, ooh, there's something wrong here. And why? We shouldn't. They are who they are. Sexual orientation is the same way. It's a third part of it. So your sex is one, what your body is. Your gender identity is another. And then your sexual orientation is also brought on by your brain. What attracts you? One's erotic attraction toward members of the same sex is homosexuality, opposite sex is heterosexuality, and both sexes is bisexuality. But there are people, there's about 1% of the population that's asexual. When you see somebody who is just the be-all and end-all of beauty for what you think is beauty, because beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but you like flush, you get flushed. Oh my gosh, is she beautiful or is he gorgeous, handsome? There are people that have none of that. They do not flush. They do not feel that draw towards someone who is handsome or who is gorgeous, pretty, and have any kind of sexual feeling about it. None. They're asexual. And if you are a person who feels that, and you fall in love with somebody who is asexual, then you're going to have something to work out between the two of you before you decide to get married. You're very, very different people. Sexology is the study of sex, and Alfred Kinsey is the person who is responsible for the idea of the study of sex. And he was a biologist back in 1947. He was not a psychologist. He was a biologist, but he influenced psychology tremendously. And if you've ever seen the movie Kinsey, there is a movie about him, and they do a very good job of showing that this man was a little nuts. He was crazy. But he did some of these first studies on sexuality, and he used what's called self-reports, which means he asked these people questions, and they told him the answers, and then he wrote it down. Well, if I asked you the same questions he asked the people, you'd punch me in the nose. You would not. I don't know how he got people so comfortable that he could ask questions like, how many times did you have sex this week? How many times did you have sex today? Did you have sex with animals? Did you have sex with other, homosexual sex, heterosexual sex? Did you have a threesome? He asked questions that you'd punch me in the nose if I asked you that kind of question, right? It's not acceptable, right? But he got them to be very easy around him, and he was able to ask these questions and find out what the answers were. Now, back in 1940s and 50s, you did not tell people if you were homosexual, because you could be put into an insane asylum and kept there for the rest of your life because you were insane for being homosexual. Or you'd be beat up and the police wouldn't care because you were a homosexual. So he had to search out and find the homosexuals to ask them these questions. And he did a really good job of finding the underground clubs where these people would hang out. And his books, Sexual Behavior in the Human Male, which was published in 1948, and Sexual Behavior in the Human Female was published in 1953, are still some of the best-selling scientific books of all time because they're about sex. So, of course, people buy them just to read about sex. So because of Kinsey, because of his work, psychologists originally thought that being a homosexual was a mental deficiency. And what he found out was, no, it is a normal part of the spectrum of sexual orientation. There are a certain percentage of people who are homosexual or bisexual. And so in 1973, the American Psychological Association removed homosexuality from its list of mental illnesses. It was no longer a mental illness. It's just a very small portion of the normal population of human beings, the spectrum of being human. And we have lots of other, besides being, homosexual, asexual, there's Q-sexuals, the people who are not sure what they are, so Q for questioning sexuals. Trisexuals, that's a joke. Trisexuals is a joke. They'll try anything once. That does not make them a particular style, but they'll just try something once just to see what it is. And, of course, the very first person who was put to death in the United States, well, actually, it was back in the day when we were colonies for England. So the first person tried by a jury and put to death in the English colonies was put to death because they couldn't stay away from sheep. So there's a whole spectrum of types of people. So the origins of sexual orientation, the biosocial theory states that the female role as childbearer sets a standard for sexual behavior and is the way that we learn how to behave in our sexual roles. male homosexuality has actually been highly correlated to the second male child if there's no other child between them. This is a really interesting one because I know a student of mine came to me one day and says, I know a firstborn child who is homosexual. They don't have any other male children in front of them. I said, how well do you know the family? She's like, well, I know the mom, the father's gone. I have no idea, where the father is, but I'm really close to the mom. I said, well, if you feel that it's okay to ask her if she had a miscarriage. And sure enough, she'd had a miscarriage and it was a boy child. And so this was the second boy child. There's only the first one that survived, but it was the second boy child. So is this caused by a strong connection to the older sibling, or maybe because there's a father in the house? Well, this proves no, that doesn't happen. There's no research to show or proof of that particular view, that it's because of the older siblings or the older man in the house that they had this connection to. No. There is, however, a biological event that occurs. So even without the second male child in the house, the loss of the first male child through adoption or death or miscarriage, and with a single mother household, the second male can be homosexual. So the idea is, why does this happen? And there is a biological cause. How many of you know your blood type? How many of you know your blood type? If you know your blood type, put it down. What your blood type is. Type in your blood type. I've got an A minus, an A negative, O positive, an O positive. No clue, center, no clue. I'm an AB positive. So there's another O positive, right? Do I have anybody that's an O negative? Anybody know they're an O negative? An O negative is a universal donor. Their blood can be given to anyone. An O negative. An O positive, no, you can give it to anyone who's positive, but you can't give it to people who are negative. So the point is, though, what does negative and what does positive mean, right? So the blood HR factor is a protein that's found on the surface of the blood. If your blood has the protein, you are Rh positive. If your blood lacks the protein, you are Rh negative. If a woman is Rh negative and her husband is Rh positive, which is my case, I'm a positive and my wife is a negative, then their child has a 50% chance of being positive and a 50% chance of being negative. They might carry the Rh positive gene protein as they're developing inside the Rh negative woman. The Rh negative mother's body sees the Rh positive child as an invading organism and attempts to kill it. In the first Rh positive pregnancy for the Rh negative woman in the body does not build up enough antibodies to damage the baby. But in the second, with all the antibodies that have already been built up because of the first one, she will kill her second child, her Rh positive second child. She will kill it. She will have a blue baby, a dead baby. Have you ever heard this? Most of you should never have heard this because you're too young. Because in my day, when I was in high school and I was dating, we had to be very careful of who we were dating because we didn't want to fall in love with somebody as a positive person. I did not want to fall in love with a negative woman because we couldn't have children. We couldn't have children, or it was possible that they would die. Today, there's a shot, so it doesn't matter anymore, and nobody even cares anymore because there's a shot you can get that takes care of the problem, and you don't have that problem anymore. But here is the mechanism that might exist to describe why the second male child is homosexual. You are a woman, and you have a male child growing inside of you, and your body's like, there's something wrong here. This child's not producing enough estrogen, producing way too much testosterone. It's not producing enough estrogen. We need to fix this. And so you have a boy that's born, but your body is now prepared, has tried to help that child to be a female because male, that's what's this? What is this? And then the second male child comes along right afterwards, and you've already built up the estrogen. You're all ready to go for the next child. And, oh, this is another male child. Let's produce the estrogen for it. And you create a brain mechanism now that is more female than male. You have a homosexual, a man who is attracted to other men, homosexuality. So I'm not saying that is actually what happens, but I'm showing you a mechanism that can explain it. Simon LeVay has done experiments with homosexual men and heterosexual men and found that the hypothalamus is different between them. The homosexuals are smaller hypothalamuses and the heterosexuals are larger hypothalamuses. So there's a mechanism in the brain that's actually different. And maybe there are other mechanisms in the brain also that are different. And we can take a rhesus monkey, a female rhesus monkey who is pregnant with a female baby, and inject that monkey with testosterone. And that testosterone in the female's body will affect the baby that's growing, and that baby female monkey will definitely be born female, but will act more like a tomboy, will act very masculine, but is definitely feminine. But then there's there's people who are born both male and female, hermaphrodites. So both sex organs existing at birth. And one is usually better formed than the other, and that might determine which one you decide you want the child to be, male or female. And if, the doctor goes, congratulations, you have a brand new babe. We'll get back to you. You don't want to hear that. You want to hear a boy or a girl. You don't want to hear, but even that is just their sex. What they are on the outside doesn't say what their brain is yet. And so this occurs at about 1 in every 14,000 births. Well, in 2006, when I was looking up the 2005 numbers, there were 4.1 million babies born in 2005, which means if it's 1 in every 14,000 births, there were 300 hermaphrodites born in the United States just in the year 2005. And you get to choose as the mother or father. Well, what do you want, boy or girl? You want a boy? We'll sew up the vagina. If you want a girl, we'll take off the penis. And then the child grows up, and by the time they're 13, 14, it's like there's something wrong. You guys, I don't understand what's wrong, but I don't feel like a girl or a guy. And so by the time they're in junior or sophomore year, they're switching. They're going back to whatever it was that they feel like in their brain they are. How about we just keep them both male and female until they decide what they want to be? And that's an easy thing to say, but a hard thing to make it work, because they're a freshman and sophomore in high school in physical education class. What bathrooms are they supposed to use? Where do they shower? We're not prepared for that. This society is not prepared for that. But that's the way it should be. We should let the child decide which one they want to be. And there are lots of different reasons for hermaphrodites, but there's also lots of reasons for the gender and the sex to be something that isn't cisgender. Cisgender meaning you're male and you feel male, or cisgender, you're female and you feel female. Well, here are two different syndromes. So AIS, the genetics of this person is XY. That means they're supposed to be male. XY is male. But for some reason, the testosterone that was produced by the Y never took effect, or the Y never produced the testosterone in the first place. And they turn out to be 100% female. They look 100% female. There's no sex, it's not hermaphrodite. You are female. And this happens 1 in 20,000 births. 1 in 20,000 births. And I have down here the name Jamie Lee Curtis. I'm not saying that Jamie Lee Curtis is AIS. There's people that say she is, but it doesn't matter. She's very private, and she shouldn't have to say if she doesn't want to, one way or the other. But she's never had a child, and AIS females cannot have children. And she is absolutely gorgeous. Have any of you seen Friday the 13th? Jason's sister, I believe, was Jamie Lee Curtis. Do you remember Friday the 13th and Jamie Lee Curtis in that movie? There was also a movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger called True Lies, and she was his wife, and he was a CIA agent or something like that, and had not told her, so it was a secret. And she's just absolutely beautiful, and she does the activity commercials also. But what I'm telling you is, an AIS male can look that beautiful, that gorgeous, a female. And then there's the CAH females. They are XX. Oh, and AIS, AIS could make really good assassins, because if they leave any biological evidence behind, the people are going to be looking for a male, not a female. Because it's an XY. Their genetics is XY. So the CAH females, they are XX, definitely female, but they have ambiguous genitalia. And that happens 1 in 60 births, way more frequently than even the hermaphrodites. So that's 2 biological reasons that we could be different than what people say we're supposed to fit into these 2 boxes. So why is this important in psychology? And the reason is because obviously there are mental issues related to the ambiguity of sex for the mother and father, and for people who are not cisgender, because society isn't ready for that. And more importantly, to show that there are biologically related issues in some sexual orientations. It is not just simply a choice, as some people say it is. It's not a choice. It is biological. We live in a spectrum. The human body, the human brain is in a spectrum. We do not fit in 2 little easy boxes. There are lots of different boxes, and we're fitting in different boxes. Your gender is a different box than your sex, a different box. Sexual orientation is a different box. They're not all the same, fitting in the same place. Positive psychology is, let me draw something for you on the screen here. Hold on, let me pull up the annotations and bring up positive psychology. So positive psychology, we have a line, and this is the positive side of the line, and this is the negative side of the line, and this is 0 right here in the middle, okay? Positive psychology says all of psychology before positive psychology came along was people that are living in the negative side, and we try to get them back to the center. We try to get them back to center. So people have an issue, let's get them back to normal. And normal is the center. But there are people that live on the positive side. They're happier than other people. They're much less depressed than other people are. They're much more positive than other people are. So why is it that we have to stop at 0? Why can't we bring people down here up to a +1? And what about people that are at +1? Could they be +5? Could we make them a +5? Could we help them to achieve a higher level of positivity, of happiness? So happiness is on a scale. There's this huge scale, but we're born in a very small area on that scale. And we tend to migrate around, this is depression, this is happiness. We migrate within that scale. There's a lot more people that are more depressed. There's a lot more people that are happier, but our scale is this scale. There are some people with bigger scales, some people with smaller scales. And it's sort of like having a rubber band on your fingers. Your rubber band is that wide, however wide your rubber band is. But this is where you're going to fit within. You're going to live within this. We'll stay around the center most of the time, but sometimes we're at the worst and sometimes we're at our best. But if something really bad happens to us, and this is our depressed side, and the worst one is the death of a spouse, we pull way out. We become very, very depressed, way more than our normal depression. But this side stays exactly where it is, and you're pulling a rubber band. And you all know if you pull a rubber band, it tries to pull back. And it takes 7 years for the death of a spouse before that rubber band pulls you back to where you were before. 7 years. If it takes longer than that, you need to see a therapist. Normal distribution curve again, 68% of us. Then let's say something happy, right? Let's talk about happy. So you get married. Oh my gosh, I got married. I'm so happy. Way outside of our happy range. Way out here in happy space. And for a marriage, it's 4 years before the rubber band pulls us back together again. 4 years. I know there's a movie that says a 7-year itch. It's not. It's 4 years. A 4-year itch. If you can make it past 4 years into the 5th year, you're doing really well in your marriage. Most marriages, the ones that end before the five years. So that is what psychologists are talking about in positive psychology with happiness, right? Why can't we move the happy mark further down so that the happy mark becomes more in the happy area? So the desire to achieve a happy state in life satisfaction exists in all of us, but we aren't very good at achieving it. And in many instances, the prevailing view of what makes us happy is incorrect. How many of you have heard more money makes you happy? How many of you have heard that? More money will make you happy. Some of you have, some of you have not. I heard money can't buy happiness. I like that, right? Money cannot buy happiness. That is false. That is false. But it's false for a very specific group of people. It can buy happiness. Yes, it can. It can buy happiness. But for a very specific group of people. But it can't prevent sadness. I like that. That's very nice. Who said that? Anaya said that. I like that. It can buy happiness, but it can't prevent sadness. But it only buys happiness, again, for a very select group of people. People in poverty and people below middle income. If you're in the middle income, an extra dollar, an extra $10, an extra $100,000 does not make you happier. All the research shows millionaires are just as messed up as the middle class is. It doesn't matter. We always live above our means anyway. No matter how much money we're making, we're in debt all the time. I mean, people say that Donald Trump is in debt. Well, yeah, every millionaire is probably in debt. Everyone. We all live beyond our debt, our means. So if you are poor, however, and you can't afford your rent, you have to make choices between your electricity and your food and the gasoline for your car and all the different things that are necessary in life. If you can increase your income, you are happier. So it does help people who are in poverty and below the middle income mark. They are happier. Anybody, I think it's $78,000 is the mid-range, the bottom of the middle income, $78,000. Anything below $78,000, more money makes you happier. And I know lots of us are in that situation, so it is hard to make it above that. But once you make it, if you're making $100,000, more money does not make you happier. To make sure you understand, the research shows money doesn't make you happier, but it doesn't make you happier in the middle to upper incomes. It does make you happier in the low incomes. Now, positive psychology studies happiness and tries to define 3 different ways that we are happy. So the first way is the pleasurable life, the ability to feel physical pleasures and it is in a distributed throughout the population. Like I said, some people here, some people here, some people here, some people a small amount, some people a large amount. Right? So it's a bell-shaped curve, and it is heritable. However your parents are, you're a mixture of them. So it doesn't change much over a lifetime. So 50% of us are below normal, below the middle, and 50% of us are above the normal. And it's hard to understand the other group when they say they're happy or they're sad, and you're looking at them going, you're in one side, they're on the other side, like, what are you talking about? So it's hard to generate more pleasure than the capacity that you're born with, but you can produce more pleasure on a momentary basis. How many of you like to go fishing? Are any of you fishermen, fisher ladies? Anybody fisher, like fishing? Nobody likes fish. There's, I got Lauren likes fishing, Anna likes fishing. Ladies, very good, very good. I enjoy fishing myself. I do not enjoy catching the fish. I enjoy just sitting there and relaxing. I go out to the Rodanthe Pier because that's where my wife's family is from, Rodanthe, down on the Outer Banks. And so I'll go down there and I sit at the pier and I put my fishing line in, but I never catch anything. I don't know why. Somebody said it's the oil on my skin smells bad to fish. So if I touch the bait, then they're not going to bite. They're not going to bite. But I'll sit there all day long and just enjoy being around the people, watching other people catch fish, watching the seagulls. It's fun. It's very relaxing. How many of you like hunting? Ava, your dad is a commercial fisherman. Very good. Nobody likes hunting? Nobody's saying yes for hunting. Yeah. Oh, there's a hunter. Not really. Yeah. I'm not a hunter. I don't particularly like it. I can shoot. I'm very good at, I've got my NRA marksman's. I can shoot, definitely. But I like to shoot at targets. I don't like to shoot at animals. But as in fact, I threw a rock at a bird once and actually hit it, knocked it off the limb, and I was like so devastated. Oh my God, it fell down. Did I kill it? You know, it was knocked out. It took a little while for it to recover, but I'll never throw a rock at a bird again. So I like bowling. Bowling is my thing. If I'm a little depressed, if I'm not feeling good, my wife will say, let's go out bowling, because she knows that I'll feel much better while I'm bowling. However, let me draw something again for you. So this is, I'm depressed, right? This is my normal state. This is where I should be. I'm depressed. I'm not feeling very good. I go bowling. I feel great. I've forgotten all about my depression. This is what men usually do. We'll talk about this in the pathology section. Women will talk about their depression. Men, let's go kill something. I'm going to kill those pins at the end of the alley. Right? I'm a very good bowler. I have over a 200 average, so 250. So, but it's a square curve, meaning as I am bowling, I feel great. I've forgotten everything about why I'm depressed, and I'm not feeling depressed anymore. But as soon as I am done, I'm back to my depressed state because it is a square. It's called a square curve. You are happy and then you're not. That's the pleasurable life. The pleasurable life produces a square curve. Do you get that? Do you see that? Do you understand square curve? Okay, so that's a square curve. Now, the good life is doing things that you like to do. Doing things that you're really good at. Right? So I love doing things with my hands. When I graduated from the College of the Albemarle, I had a degree, I had 3 degrees in electronics, electronic engineering, computer electronics, and computer programming. And I went to work for a company and I fixed VCRs and televisions and computers. And I just loved working with my hands. And I would get in at 8 o'clock and start working on something, and somebody would tap my shoulder and go, hey, it's lunchtime. I'm like, what? How can it be lunchtime? That's 4 hours. It's 12 o'clock already? Have any of you ever had that happen where time just disappears, flows by so fast? That's called flow. It's called flow. So some of you have had that. My prayer for you is that when you go to work, you will find a job that gives you flow, because you will never work a day in your life if you just have that flow. It's like 5 o'clock comes along, you're like, I don't want to leave. I'm like, I love this job. This is just great. I love doing this. So, but again, it's on a square curve. It is a square curve. While you're doing it, you've forgotten all about the things that are going on in your life, and you're feeling really good about doing what you're doing, and the time just flows right by, and then when you're done, you're right back into your life again. And it does not last. That feeling does not last. The meaningful life is completely different. The meaningful life, you are working for somebody else. You're doing something for them. Your next door neighbor, here's my depression state. This is where I was supposed to be, right? My next door neighbor breaks his leg. Oh no. Don't worry about your yard. I will mow your yard for you. Don't worry about, I understand until you get your back on your feet. I'll take care of it. That's a meaningful life. Doing things for other people. Helping the old lady across the street. That's a Boy Scout thing, right? Help the old lady across. I guess Girl Scouts are supposed to help old men across the street, and then the old ladies get helped by Boy Scouts. So at least both of them get to go across the street at some point. But you are helping somebody, and you get that feeling of, great, I'm doing something for somebody else. I'm doing that job that's for them. I'm working at the food bank. Whatever it is that you're doing. Teaching is a supposedly way to get this feeling. That people who are nurses and doctors, sociologists, psychologists, social workers, psychiatrists, these are all ways to help other people. Now, I know doctors who are in it for the money only, and they don't care about it. I'm sure some of you know doctors like that too. They're like the worst. They're just horrible people. All they're there for is to just tell you what's wrong with you and get you out of the house so that they can get their money. So they're not in the meaningful life. Okay, if you're in the meaningful life, you're doing it for this other person. And when you're finished with your whatever it is you did, your feeling maintains for a longer period of time. So it's much longer than the normal square curve is. And as it's falling slowly down, you might do something else for somebody else, and now you're way higher than you were before in happiness. We can increase our happiness and go into a higher bracket of happiness by working for other people, living a meaningful life. And even the Bible tells us this. So it's not unknown, in religious circles. So do you get that? Do you see the meaningful life is very important to improving your positive outcomes in life? You're feeling well about yourself. I can see lots of you are saying yes. Okay. And that's really the end of the motivation chapter. And if there are any questions on motivation, I'll be glad to answer them. But if not, then I'm going to start with stress, health, and well-being. Any questions? I'm not seeing any questions. All right. So stress, health, and well-being. Stress is very important. This chapter is very important because stress can kill you. You can die from stress. So it's really important to understand the stress and how to get rid of stresses. And I have the discussion out there to ask you, what are your top 5 hassles in life, so that you can tell me what your 5 hassles are in life. And I've already given you mine in the answers. Before you even get to replying, I'll show you what mine are, my hassles. But they're the little things in life, but they still cause stress. And enough of them cause a major amount of stress. So stress is the physical and mental responses to a challenging or threatening situation that taxes or exceeds us, our ability to cope with it. The stressor doesn't really matter. The stressor is the thing that's causing the stress. It's the environmental impact, whatever it is, that's causing the stress in us. And it can be the exact same thing for multiple people and cause different levels of stress. How many of you know how to repair a tire? When a tire goes bad and you have to put on the spare tire, how many of you could change your tire? Does anybody in the class know how to change a tire? Some of you do. Excellent. And the first ones to respond were the females. Thank you very much. Somewhat, not somewhat. So if you know how to change a tire, then when your tire goes flat, not so much of a problem. But for the people who do not know how to change a tire, it becomes a major issue. So it causes way more stress, but it's the exact same thing, but different levels of stress because of the way that you know how to handle it. And that's what we call the primary appraisal. When something bad happens in the environment and we have to determine, is this something that we can handle or not? And we have to look at ourselves, lots of different ways to look at it. Harm loss appraisal is when injury has occurred, and it's always a negative. And then threat appraisal, you slam on the brakes because the guy in front of you stopped and you didn't see it. And then there's water on the road, so you're sliding. You know you're going to hit him or her. You know you're going to hit that car in front of you. And so it's a threat appraisal is, oh my gosh, something's going to happen and it's going to be bad, right? That's harm. That's also negative emotions. And then the challenge appraisal. And this can elicit both positive and negative depending on the type of person you are. And we'll talk about hardy people and non-hardy people in this particular one. And if you are hardy, you like challenges. If you're non-hardy, you don't like challenges. And then we'll talk about this when we come back again on Tuesday. Are there any questions? I don't see anybody with questions. Okay, then if there are, stay and talk to me. If not, have a good weekend. I will see you on Tuesday. Stay healthy. Bye.